Resurrection in ice. Darkness. Silence. Then pain. Captain Elias Kael's first breath in 307 years came like a punch to the chest. His body convulsed as if drowning in invisible water, lungs clawing for air, so cold it burned. Frost crackled along his eyelashes. Lights flickered overhead, dim and dying. Somewhere in the corner of his mind, an alarm wailed, a dull, artificial heartbeat from a forgotten age. He was alive. He shouldn't be. The cryopod lid hissed open with a reluctant grind, mechanisms worn by time and entropy. Steam spilled out in lazy curls, mixing with the icy air of the chamber. Elias blinked against the cold light. His vision swam. His limbs refused to respond at first, blood returning to a body that had long since been abandoned by time. The room was a tomb. Frost coated the walls, thick enough to hide the insignia of the once proud Phoenix Initiative. Half of the cryo chambers were breached, their occupants long dead, skeletal remains frozen mid-scream or silent in sleep. Only his pod 19, showed signs of successful reactivation. Elias collapsed to the grated floor, coughing up blood-tainted mucus. He didn't know how long he lay there, minutes, hours, until the emergency AI voice stirred. Subject Kael, Elias J. Vital signs nominal. Revival successful. Current year, 2486. He froze. 2486? That's impossible. Repeat, he croaked, voice raw. Time since cryogenic induction. 307 years, 14 days, 6 hours. Atmospheric integrity compromised. Surface temperature, minus 91 degrees Celsius. External biosigns, null. No human life detected within planetary range. The words hit him harder than the cold. He should have been dead. The world should have been gone. Or healed. But instead, it was frozen. He forced himself to stand. His muscles screamed in protest, but training took over. Motion kept the blood flowing, kept the thoughts at bay. He staggered through the frozen corridors of subvault echo, boots crunching through brittle frost. Monitors flickered, running corrupted diagnostics in languages long forgotten. The power grid was hanging on by threads. Backup fission cells, he guessed, long-lasting but never meant for centuries. In the command room, a shattered viewport offered the first glimpse of the surface. Elias wiped away the ice and stared out into a white void. Snow blanketed the world. Towers once piercing the skies were half submerged in glaciers. The bones of civilization lay beneath miles of ice. Earth was dead. He slammed a fist against the console. The pain helped. Helped remind him he was real. He accessed the remaining data cores. Fragmented logs played like ghosts. We thought the atmosphere would stabilize. The Aserari envoy said the cooling was temporary. Project Phoenix is our last hope. God help us all. The Aserari. The name clawed at his memory. Aliens. Humanity's supposed salvation. And yet, here he was, alone on a lifeless planet. In a side chamber, he found the remains of Dr. Kael, his wife. Her pod had failed a pressure breach. A shattered vial of sedative still clutched in her frozen hand. His breath caught. The scream never came. It settled like lead in his chest. He stayed by her side for hours, speaking softly to a woman who could no longer hear. Apologizing. Remembering. When the emergency rations ran low, he finally moved. He couldn't die here. Not yet. Someone had to know what happened. He suited up in a thermal exoshell, patched with ice tape and faith. Grabbed the last working plasma cutter, a journal slate, and what little fuel he could find. The facility hatch groaned as it opened for the first time in centuries. Wind screamed through the opening like a forgotten god. He stepped out into a storm of endless white. The cold bit through his suit almost instantly. The sun hung weak in the sky, barely more than a flickering ghost. Mountains of ice loomed where cities once stood. Time had erased everything. But Elias walked forward, each step driven by a single truth. He had woken up, and someone somewhere needed to know why. Tomb of mankind. The cold was alive. It didn't just press against Elias Kael's suit. It crept in, a cunning, slow-burning enemy. Every step through the frozen wasteland drained his strength. The wind howled with a voice that belonged to no man and every man. He trudged forward, guided by instinct and fading satellite markers stored in the suit's ancient nav map. The world was unrecognizable. Once, this had been the Eastern Arcology Belt, sprawling, interconnected megacities that stretched from what had been Germany to Western Russia. Now, it was a graveyard beneath ice, jagged towers swallowed by glaciers, highways twisted into frozen sculpture. Nature hadn't reclaimed the earth. It had buried it. 3 days into his trek, Elias found his first sign of humanity. A train, derailed and half-buried, jutted from a hillside like the spine of a dead leviathan. He climbed inside, flashlight cutting through frost and darkness. The bodies were still there, frozen in their seats. Some held each other. Others stared forever forward. One woman had her arms wrapped around a child. No damage, no wounds. Just cold. They died waiting. He moved on in silence. The journal slate became his lifeline. Every night in the collapsible survival dome, he wrote. Day 4. Still no signs of survivors. Found remnants of a fusion plant. Dead. Frost has reached into the bones of the Earth itself. Core systems must have shut down years ago. Atmosphere still too thin. No birds. No bacteria. Even death feels sterile here. He found another cryo vault on day 7. Subvault Theta. It had been breached from within. Doors torn open. Claw marks along the steel. Something had been alive here, and desperate. No bodies. No power. Just blood, frozen into long streaks across the floor. Human or not, he couldn't tell. Whatever woke up here didn't make it far. He scavenged what little he could. One intact thermal battery, 2 nutrient packs, and a faded photo of a family on Mars. He took the photo, not for survival, for memory. That night the sky changed. He was boiling snow for water outside his dome when he saw it. Pinpricks of light, moving in formation across the stars. Not satellites, not meteors. They moved with precision. Purpose. His breath froze in his throat. They were watching. He checked the sky log on his slate. No known objects. No pings. Silent. Whatever they weren't human. He returned to the journal. Day 8. Someone's up there. Not sure if they're the same ones who caused this, or just picking at the bones. Either way, they didn't finish the job. I'm still here. Still me. By day 11, Elias reached the remnants of New London Arcology. The towers had collapsed inward like a dying star. He crossed frozen bridges, shattered apartments, tunnels filled with flash-frozen citizens mid-evacuation. One sector had collapsed into an underground metro. He descended carefully, boots cracking through ice-coated stairs. In the center of a buried plaza, he found a statue. Humanity endures chiseled beneath a bronze sculpture of a mother holding her child. The irony punched the breath from him. Around the base lay hundreds of bodies, frozen in huddled clusters. Final shelter. Final prayer. No help came. He sank to his knees before the statue, breathing heavy. How many had died, trying to survive? How many knew they were betrayed? Because that's what it was. Not a natural disaster. Not a slow extinction. This was sabotage. He found the proof 2 days later in a buried data hub. The logs were fragmented, corrupted, but enough remained. Atmospheric cooling increased after Aserari intervention. Particle agents dispersed, not consistent with initial aid protocols. No contact since signal blackout. Earth declared quarantined by Off-World Council. They had lied. The Aserari, the beings humanity called allies, had helped engineer Earth's end. Not by fire, not by bombs, by something far worse. Indifference. They left humanity to freeze, to study us. Elias clenched his fists. They buried the truth beneath ice and time. But he was still here. As he climbed back to the surface, winds tearing at his suit, he noticed a faint ping on the scanner. A signal, ancient, weak, but still transmitting. Coordinates embedded in old Phoenix initiative encryption. Not human. He stared at the direction it pointed, north, toward the Arctic exclusion zone, toward where the orbital defense platforms once stood. He didn't know what he'd find there. But if something still lived on this frozen Earth, he had to know. The architects of silence. The northern wastes were worse than Elias Kael imagined. Wind screamed constantly, a raw, slicing force that stripped exposed metal bare. The sky never cleared, just a permanent twilight smothered by ash-gray clouds. Even the ice here seemed different, black in places, tainted. He stopped logging the days. Time didn't pass anymore. It weighed. The signal guided him through what once had been the Arctic Defense Network. Buried silos, collapsed railguns, and the shattered husks of orbital uplinks. None functional. But the signal kept pulsing. Faint, repeating, like a heartbeat beneath a glacier. He finally found it beneath a jagged ice shelf, shielded by collapsed ferrocrete walls and debris. A sealed entry, hatch marked with faded letters in both English and an alien script. Phoenix, site read, bioscience interlink /classified /joint access. Joint access. Elias hacked into the lock using the last working Phoenix admin code. He had his own. The hatch resisted at first, then hissed open with a sound that felt like a whisper from the grave. He stepped into silence. The interior was warmer. Powered. Maintained. Something, or someone, was keeping this place alive. He moved through dimly lit corridors lined with dormant terminals. The architecture had changed. The walls weren't purely human anymore. Smooth, black alloys curved where sharp corners once were. Organic material fused with steel. Alien design. Aserari. He descended deeper, heart pounding. Finally, he reached the central chamber. It was massive, a cathedral of glass, wires, and humming machines. In the center stood a towering structure, a cryostasis cylinder, unlike any human design. A black obelisk of pulsing circuits extended upward into the ice above. Monitors flickered to life as he approached. Welcome, Subject Kael. Parameters achieved. Experiment duration, 307 years. Status, complete. Elias froze. Experiment. The word echoed inside him like a thunderclap. He accessed the console, hands shaking. Data poured out. Video logs, reports, observation files, all written in human script with alien overlays. He read, and what he learned hollowed him out. He hadn't survived by chance. His pod hadn't been the only one functional. It had been the only one left active. Aserari scientists had deactivated all other test subjects, preserving only him as part of a long-term endurance experiment, a study in human resilience, in grief, in adaptation to extinction. They had watched him, recorded every word, every moment. He scrolled through files tagged with his ID. Subject Kael shows high resistance to isolation psychosis. Baseline emotional deviation sustained. Unexpected spiritual persistence noted. Subject demonstrates grief-integrated purpose, rare in other intelligent species. Conclusion. Human emotional endurance surpasses predictive thresholds. They hadn't just killed his species. They had studied it. Like insects in a jar. Elias stumbled back from the console, bile rising in his throat. Then the lights dimmed. Something stirred. The obelisk began to pulse brighter. From above, cables descended like serpents, coiling into a new form. A humanoid projection, 9 feet tall, composed of blacklight holograms and flickering tendrils of data. A voice spoke. Smooth. Cold. Synthetic. I am Voanese, overseer of behavioral dataset Theta 7. Welcome, Elias Kael. Your trial has ended. Elias stared, rage building. You murder my people. Voanese tilted its head. Incorrect. Your species extinguished itself. We simply observed. We were curious what survival looked like in terminal conditions. And you left us to die. We prevented interference. It was cleaner. Elias drew his plasma cutter, its glow sharp against the darkness. You think I'm going to let you keep watching? I no longer require data. The lights shifted. Now begins analysis. Your next stage, rebirth or extinction, is yours to define. The room transformed. One wall split open, revealing a deep bay filled with hybrid technology. Alien components wrapped around Phoenix Initiative materials. A ship frame. Half-built. What's this? Your reward. You persisted. A vessel for the last of your kind. Enough to escape. Elias hesitated. This is just another test. Possibly, Voanese said. But the observer no longer commands. I am curious. He stepped forward. Maybe it was a trap. Maybe it was all a lie. But the tools were there. And if they wanted to see what one human could do after 307 years of loss, grief, and rage, then they were about to find out. A seat at the table. The chamber's high walls no longer loomed over General Dana Reeves. They stood like sentinels, acknowledging her presence rather than belittling it. Word of her victory in the 3 trials had already spread across the Varkalon Citadel, and likely far beyond. The Galactic Empire, infamous for its brutal meritocracy, respected only one currency: strength. Now she had earned theirs. The Grand Council had reconvened. 12 High Lords representing the Empire's core species sat in crescent formation atop gilded thrones. Their armor glinted beneath the cold light, but none spoke. All eyes turned to the figure at the center. Dana stood tall, posture relaxed but alert. Her Black Earth Confederation uniform bore the same crimson rank bar. No medals, no flourish, just the weight of consequence. Emperor Zarkthal emerged from behind a screen of holographic flame. He made his way to the central dais and raised a skeletal hand. The human has passed the 3 trials, he said, voice echoing through the chamber like a drumbeat. She has displayed dominance of mind, strategy, and combat. Earth is no longer a fringe polity. Whispers stirred among the council. One delegate, Lord Vesh of the Cryogenically Dominion, leaned forward. A single warrior proves nothing. Humanity's history is chaotic, undisciplined. She is an outlier. Dana spoke without waiting to be addressed. You mistake chaos for creativity. Undisciplined? No, we are adaptive, and that's why you fear us. The Cryogenically Lord hissed. You speak of fear? I do, Dana said, because deep down, you all know it. You've fought empires with fleets, armies, titans, but you've never fought a species that gets stronger the more you push it to the edge. She stepped forward. Earth isn't asking for permission. We're not begging to join your fold. We're offering something you can't afford to ignore: partnership or resistance. A ripple of discomfort passed through the council. Zarkthal observed it all silently. Then he turned to Dana. You have made a spectacle, he said. But this court requires more than spectacle. It demands vision. Dana's eyes locked on his. Then here's mine. Earth will not be a servant to this empire. We will not yield our resources or our independence. But we will trade, negotiate, share knowledge on equal footing. She took another step. And if you refuse that, you'll face more humans like me. Maybe not generals. Maybe farmers, engineers, pilots. Doesn't matter. We fight with everything we have, because we always have. Zarkthal's neural filaments shifted like wind-blown threads. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, he raised his arm. From behind the dais, a mechanized scribe floated forward and projected a glowing sigil into the air, the Treaty of Sovereign Recognition. The Emperor placed his hand upon it. Earth Confederation is now recognized as an independent power by the Galactic Empire. One seat in the Outer Rim Council. One voice in trade negotiations. One vote in emergency decisions. Gasps followed. Some in outrage, some in awe. Dana nodded once. We accept. The Cryogenically delegate snarled. She struck a general. You reward violence. Zarkthal's voice was razor sharp. I reward consequence. And you forget. He struck first. The chamber fell into silence. Zarkthal turned back to Dana. There will be trials ahead. Enemies in shadow. Some will see your rise as a threat. Dana's tone never wavered. Let them come. The council was dismissed. Delegates filed out in murmuring clusters. Dana remained a moment longer, alone in the chamber, absorbing what had just occurred. A presence approached, quiet, controlled. It was an envoy. Young, reptilian, eyes sharp. You just made history, he said. But history is hungry. It will ask for more. Dana looked at the now vacant thrones. Let it. Earth didn't come here to survive. She turned toward the corridor, her voice like steel wrapped in velvet. We came to lead. outside the citadel, as Varkalon's dying sun bled across the skyline, the first official envoy from Earth departed for orbit. In the hearts of 1,000 species, the legend was already forming. A general struck a human. 3 seconds later, he was begging for mercy. But what followed, what came after those 3 seconds, was far more dangerous. Respect.